Peace and greetings. You know what I found out is an underrated part of life, my life? Good neighbors. Good neighbors is underrated. And it's a shame because I have a good neighbor right now and I'll be missing him on purpose. You know, he's an older cat, 62-year-old brother and a Redskin fan. He live alone, got a daytime job, chills out with a six-pack every evening. He'd be like, yo, Mike, come over watch the game with me, bro. And I always be like, yeah, I'ma come do that. It don't happen. Some nights his lady come by and she always give my son a popsicle or a cookie. Even when I don't want him to have no sweets, here they come with that. Good neighbors. You know, he has a nice family, he got grown kids, they come through, and sometimes he have his grandkids over, and he's cool, and I appreciate him. But I still don't kick it with him. How many of you have a good neighbor that you take for granted? Now, the reason why this is so interesting in my case is because I've had bad neighbors all my life. When I first was introduced to the world, I lived in Brooklyn, in the projects, Marcus Garvey and Brownsville. Let me tell you about my first set of neighbors. My neighbors was literally a tragic ghetto reality show. The neighbor to the right was an older black lady with 10 kids. Most of them was grown, but a few of them was teenagers. One of her sons, one of the grown ones, went to jail for robbing a train. One of the daughters was a full-time prostitute on Saratoga Avenue, one train station away from my block, so everyone in the neighborhood would see her sometimes working. My father even told me an awkward story about her running up and propositioning him one time before she realized it was him. Then she scampered away in shame. Many nights, or mornings rather, she would come knocking at the door around dawn, begging to be let in, only to be ignored, and she would fall asleep on the bench outside. Her son, who was 3 years younger than me, was being raised by his grandmother, of course. He went to jail for homicide at 16 years old, but I personally saw him rob, cut, and brutalize other young men his whole life, and I even witnessed with my own eyes he and one of his friends attempt to sexually assault his younger cousin, which she reported to her mother, and even pointed to me and said that I was there but did not participate. The neighbors to my left was an older couple, grandparents, 4 adult children. One of them died from an overdose. Her son was a bully who got locked up in Spotfoot Juvenile Detention Center at 12. The 2 adult daughters who lived there with them would often get in fights, and the grandfather had allegedly raped one of the daughters, according to neighborhood rumor. And my father, who worked for social services, told me that all the grandchildren in that family had open accounts in the inner city of at-risk children files. As an adult, I had one neighbor who lived upstairs from me who would awkwardly tell me that he would hear me and my girl having sex in the hallway and smiled about it. Fuck out of here. I had one neighbor whose boyfriend accused me of trying to push up on her, and the girl admitted to me later that she led him to believe that because she wanted to make him mad. At one point, my ex-wife's father was one of my neighbors, and her aunt was another. But my favorite neighbor of all time was Mr. Melvin, who had a neighborhood food truck out in Holly Cove in Chesapeake. And that food truck evolved into a crazy popular neighborhood store in the back alley of his garage. Mr. Melvin sold everything from fish sandwiches to blunts and Lucy's. I would chill out and play chess with him in the shop some days, and I could tell you, he experienced every ghetto-ass, Chris Rock type begging, bartering, stealing scenarios, enough to write a whole book or a movie. But one night, a man came running into the back of the store topless, bleeding from his abdomen, covering the wound with a bloody t-shirt, asking for help. He'd been stabbed. Melvin just stood there with a look on his face like, here we go again with some more Holly Cole bullshit. However, I'm a former EMT, and I instinctively tried to help him. I told him to sit down, and I asked if he called 911. He said, no, I got warrants. Can somebody just take me to the hospital? And I was less eager to do that, but I still wanted to help the brother. Melvin said, shit, I'm working here. I'm not closing my shop to let this convict bleed in my car. My grandbaby's car seat is in that car. Then the man seated in his chair, breathing rapidly, looks up and said, one more thing, I'm HIV positive. That was it. Melvin pulled out the revolver and told Redman, get the fuck out of his store. He was like, yo, I sell people food, man. Homie broke out, and I hope he made it. But anyway, shout out to my good neighbor that I got right now. By the way, I still can't remember his name. We'll be right back after this break. It's the Street 16 podcast. Pause. You are now listening to the Street 16 podcast.